welcome you all. In today's class, we will be dealing with the divorce by mutual consent under the Muslim law. Unlike the Hindu law or the Christian law regarding mutual consent, the provision for divorce by mutual consent under the Muslim law, that is mainly governed by the principles of certain Muslim personal laws. And the divorce by mutual consent under the Muslim law, it's having two forms. One is khula and the other is mubarat. The main difference between the khula and mubarat is that in case of khula, the mode of divorce is that it's a divorce for mutual consent for consideration which is initiated from the part of the wife. That means the wife will be making a proposal for divorce, and that too for a consideration. And in this form of divorce, the husband will be given with an opportunity either to accept the offer made by the wife or to reject it. Going traditionally through the traditional concept of khula, it is evident that whether to accept khula or not, that is the discretion of the husband. And once the husband determines that he is not ready for a khula, then wife has no option according to the traditional Muslim law. So as I have told you, khula is a form of divorce whereby the wife redeems herself from the marriage for certain consideration. So certainly it is a divorce which is at the instance of the wife. And the wife is bound to compensate the husband. Wife is bound to compensate the husband. Wife is bound to pay compensation to her husband. It may be by way of money or by way of any property. And also, in the form of khula, she will have to relinquish her claim for dowry. And there will be a dissolution of marriage. And once the husband accepts the offer made by the wife, or when the husband has given his consent for khula, at the moment the marriage will be dissolved, and it is irrevocable also. So it cannot be revoked again by an afterthought either of the wife or of a husband. And it's a talaq, which talaq-i-bayn, which means an irrevocable talaq. And it's also an extrajudicial divorce. It's also an extrajudicial divorce. Originally this form of talaq that was approved by the court in Munshi Buzul ul Rahim versus Lutifut Unisa. The principles regarding khula that was originally laid down by the Privy Council in Munshi Buzul ul Rahim versus Lutifut Unisa. And in this case, the court has laid down certain principles. The first one is that it is a form of divorce which is obtained by the mutual consent of the parties. And the conditions of a khula, that will depend upon a document called khula nama, wherein the proposal and the conditions which are put forward by the wife and accepted by the husband are to be noted down. And in a khula, in the form of khula, the wife can give up her right to recover the amount of mahar, and she will enter into another agreement as a condition for khula. And once as I have told you, once the husband accepts the proposal given by the wife, khula will come into force, and that divorce will be irrevocable. And if the wife does not pay the consideration to her husband, the divorce will not be cancelled, and the only remedy available for the husband is to file a civil suit for recovery of the amount which has been provided under the Khula Nama. So coming into that, and having regard to the decision laid down by the Privy Council in Munshi Buzul ul Rahim versus Nutifat Uniza, the High Court of Kerala, in a division bench of the High Court of Kerala in X versus X, which is reported in 2021, Volume 2, KHC 0109. Certain conditions were laid down by the High Court of Kerala. And those conditions which are laid down by the High Court of Kerala in X versus X is, firstly, there should be a declaration of repudiation or termination of the marriage by wife. So the wife will have to at first declare that she is willing to repudiate her marriage. And it should be combined with an offer to return the dower or any other material gain which she has received from her husband. Whatever property she has received from her husband, she will be bound to give back that property. And again, before the coming into force of Khula, there should be an effective attempt for reconciliation. And that effective attempt for reconciliation, that is a condition precedent with regard to Khula, as laid down by the Honorable High Court in X versus X. So, the court has also observed that the consent of the husband is not a precondition with regard to Khula. And this observation made by the High Court of Kerala in X versus X goes against all the traditional concepts with regard to Khula, which insist that one of the essential condition for a Khula is the consent given by the husband. But having regard to the special circumstances which prevails in the community, and having regard to the various provisions of the constitutional provisions also, the High Court of Kerala, the division bench, has in X versus X made a proposal that, or made it a condition that the consent of the husband, it is not a condition for Khula. And the Khula will be treated as valid or effective under the law only if it is preceded by an effective attempt for reconciliation. So, if there is an effective attempt for reconciliation, even if the husband does not consent to the proposal given by the wife, Khula will be valid as per the decision which has been laid down by the Honorable High Court of Kerala in X versus X. And this decision of the division bench of the Honorable High Court of Kerala, that has overruled the earlier judgment given by the High Court of Kerala in KC Moin versus Nafisa. KC Moin versus Nafisa, AIR 1973, Kerala 176. So, in KC Moin versus Nafisa, it was held that after the coming into force of the Dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act 1939, the wife is having only the remedies which are provided under that act. And going through the nature of the Muslim women, the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act, there is no any option for divorce by mutual consent under the Act. And in KC Moin versus Nafisa, it was held that after the enactment of the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act 1939, there is no scope for Khula as a form of divorce by mutual consent. Though there may be certain differences of opinion with regard to with regard to the decision which has been laid down by the Honorable High Court of Kerala in X versus X, it can be seen to be a progressive attempt which enables a Muslim wife to go for a divorce by mutual consent. and this decision takes away the right of the husband, the discretion of the husband, either to give consent for a khula or not. In that angle, we can say that the decision which has been laid down in X versus X is a progressive step, with certain reservations with regard to the provisions of the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act and the decision which has been laid down by the single bench of the Kerala High Court in KC Moin versus Nafis. Certain reservations are there still that can be considered to be a progressive step. And the second form of divorce by mutual consent provided under the Muslim law, that is Mubarat. Mubarat, M-U-B-A-R-A-T, Mubarat. Mubarat is exactly a divorce by mutual consent. And in Mubarat, it's a mutual release. And if the husband and the wife, during their life, during their married life, comes to a conclusion that they are not in a position to proceed with their marriage time, Mubarak provides a remedy for them to have a mutual release, to have a divorce by way of mutual consent. So there may be no such reason also among them, as we have seen with regard to the consent theory, or as we have seen with regard to the irretrievably breakdown theory. There may not be a fault on the part of either the husband or the wife, but they may feel that it would be impossible for them to proceed with a married life. And in such circumstances, Mubarak provides with a mutual release. And this Mubarak, as an extrajudicial divorce, it can be said to be strictly based upon a mutual consent. Unlike khula in Mubarak, an offer of divorce may proceed either from the part of the husband or wife. And once the other party accepts the offer made by the other, the Mubarak will come into operation and it will operate as a irrevocable talaq. And either be in the case of khula or in the case of Mubarak, the wife is bound to observe iddat also. And now we will see what are the effects of this khula and Mubarak. Unless otherwise provided in the contract, a divorce effected by way of a khula or Mubarak will operate as a release of dower by the wife, be it khula or be it Mubarak. In both the cases, such a divorce by mutual consent, that will operate as a release of dower by the wife. And that will not, however the amount of mahar has been released, it will not affect the liability of the husband to maintain his wife. The maintenance as provided under the statutes that will have to be provided by the husband even in case of khula or Mubarak, as observed by Mullah in his work, The Principles of Muhammadan Law. And the parties parties to the marriage which has been dissolved by way of khula or Mubarak, they are free to move to the family court for obtaining an endorsement of extrajudicial divorce and for a declaration on the matrimonial status of the parties. And when such an application is made, before the court, the court is bound. The court is bound to grant or to declare the marital status of the parties without any further inquiry. So once a document showing a khula or Mubarak is produced before the court in an application for a declaration of the marital status of the parties, the court, without making any further inquiry, is bound to pass a decree stating or decree which declares the marital status of the parties as they are divorced. As they can move it as provided under explanation D provided to Section 7(1) of the Family Courts Act. Again, coming to Section 19, Clause 2 of the Family Courts Act. Being a divorce which has been obtained by the consent of both the parties, the scope of appeal is also limited, and an appeal also cannot be filed against such a decree which declares the matrimonial status of the parties. So that is with regard to that is with regard to the issue of divorce by mutual consent under the Muslim personal law. So, by the decision in X versus X, the Kerala High Court has taken away one part from the concept of khula. That is with regard to the consent of the husband. So, if other conditions which are provided under X versus X are satisfied, then the divorce by way of khula will be a valid divorce. So that's with regard to divorce by mutual consent under the Muslim personal law. Now we will move on to the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act 1939. The Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act 1939. As we have seen, the concept of talaq does not provide a right with the wife. In every case of talaq, the right to pronounce talaq is only upon the husband, except in case of khula or mubarat. It's an absolute right which vests with the husband. And there is a concept called fasq, which provides, or a form of divorce called fasq, which is provided under the Muslim personal law to the wife to obtain a decree of divorce through the interference of the court. And in tune with that form of divorce, that's in the form of fasq, the statute, the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act 1939 has been enacted. And now we'll see what are the grounds for divorce as provided under the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act 1939. The first ground for divorce, the grounds for divorce under the Act are provided under Section 2 of the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act. Section 2(1) provides the civil death as a first ground for divorce under the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act. Section 2(1). And according to Section 2(1), if the whereabouts of the husband is not known for a period of 4 years, it would be a ground for divorce. And Section 3 of the Act clearly provides who all shall be made a parties in an application for dissolution of marriage on the ground of civil death. And Section 3 provides that the petition filed under Section 2(1) of the Dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act, that should clearly state with regard to who all should have been made the legal, who all are the legal heirs of the husbands whose whereabouts are not known for the period of 4 years. And it will be considered that the husband has died on the date of filing of the petition, and the legal heirs will have to be considered as on the date of filing of the petition. And it is also necessary that the paternal uncle and brother of the husband, if any, they are also to be made parties to a petition filed under Section 2(1). This is provided under Section 3 of the Act. And it is further provided that a decree which has been passed under Section 2(1), that will take effect only after a period of 6 months from the date of the decree. So even though the decree is passed declaring civil death of the husband, or a decree of divorce on the ground of civil death under Section 2(1) of the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act is passed, that will remain without operation for a period of 6 months. Only after a lapse of 6 months, the decree will come into operation. And if within that period of 6 months, if the husband appears in person, or if the husband appears through an agent, through an authorized agent before the court, and satisfies the court that the husband is prepared to perform his conjugal duties, the decree which has been passed will be set aside. So even though a decree on the ground provided under section 2(1) has been passed, that will remain in abeyance for a period of 6 months. Only after the lapse of 6 months, the decree will come into force. And if by that time, either the husband or an agent who has been duly authorized by the husband appears before the court and satisfies the court that he is ready and willing to perform his conjugal duties, then the decree will be set aside. The second ground for divorce under the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act, as provided under section 2 of the act, is the husband failed to provide maintenance. So if the husband has failed to provide maintenance to his wife for a period of 2 years, the husband has failed to provide maintenance for his wife for a period of 2 years, that would be a ground for divorce. In Yusuf Rawattar versus Saurama, Yusuf Rawattar versus Saurama, AIR 1971, Kerala 261. AIR 1971, Kerala 261. In this case, it was observed that a mere non-maintenance by the husband for a period of 2 years, that would entitle the wife to file or to obtain a dissolution of her marriage. But if the wife has voluntarily left the company of the husband, and if she refuses to come back despite the requests which are made by the husband, she will not be entitled for a decree of divorce under section 2(2). So if the wife has voluntarily refused to live along with the husband, and even in spite of the requests which are made by the husband, if the wife is not ready and willing to return or to join the company of the husband, a decree for divorce under section 2 of the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act will not be granted. That was laid down by the High Court of Calcutta, a division bench of the High Court of Calcutta, in Mabia Khatun Bibi versus Sheikh Anwar Ali. Mabia Khatun Bibi versus Sheikh Anwar Ali, reported in AIR 1971, Calcutta 216. AIR 1971, Calcutta 216. The third ground, coming to the third ground. The third ground for divorce as provided under the Act is that husband sentenced to imprisonment for a period of 7 years or more. If the husband has been sentenced to imprisonment for a period of 7 years or more, that would be a ground for divorce under the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act. However, the decree of divorce would be passed only if the sentence has become final. Only if the sentence has become final, divorce under section 2(3) will be granted. The fourth ground for divorce under the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act is desertion. And the period of desertion, unlike in other statutes, it's a period of 3 years. Desertion, and the words which are used in the statute under section 2(4) is that the husband has failed to perform, without reasonable cause his marital obligations for a period of 3 years. So failure of the husband to perform his marital obligations. That clearly implies that, as we have seen, even if they are residing at the same roof, under the single roof, there is that would amount to a ground under section 2(4) of the Act, as we have seen in the earlier cases which we have discussed while we were dealing with the Hindu Marriage Act. Now coming to the fifth ground. The fifth ground is that of impotency of the husband. Section 2(5). Section 2(5) of the Act provides impotency also as a ground for divorce under the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act. And for attracting the provision, this provision under Section 2(5), the husband should have been impotent at the time of the marriage and should continue to be impotent. The words which are used in the section is that the husband was impotent at the time of marriage and continues to be so. So the wife will be bound to prove that her husband was impotent at the time of marriage, and that impotency continues. And this impotency continues. And there is also a proviso to this section, to this particular, before a proviso which has to be read along with this. It is further provided that before passing a decree on the ground of impotency, if an application is made by the husband, before the court, that he may be granted a period of 1 year to prove his potency, the court is bound to grant such an application. And if the husband could satisfy the court within the period of that 1 year that he is not impotent as on that date, impotent within that 1 year, then such decree shall not be granted. So the husband may require the court that he may be granted a period of 1 year to prove that he is potent, and if it is proved, the decree shall not be granted. Yet another ground is with regard to insanity or suffering from virulent venereal diseases. There was also another ground along with that is with a virulent form of leprosy which has been deleted. And the wife can file a petition for divorce under section 2(6) if the husband is suffering from insanity, or if the husband is insane for a period of 2 years. So the wife could file an application on the ground of insanity only after 2 years after her husband has become insane. And with regard to virulent venereal disease, what is venereal disease we have discussed earlier. It would be certainly a ground for divorce. And the issue was discussed by the Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court, in X versus Z. X versus Z reported in AIR 1999 Supreme Court 495. AIR 1999 Supreme Court 495. In this case, the Supreme Court has held that Section 2 of the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act, which sets out that husband is suffering from a virulent venereal disease, the wife is entitled for divorce, and she will be entitled to obtain a decree of divorce of her marriage, dissolution of her marriage. And in this case, it was further observed by the Supreme Court that if the person suffering from that dreadful disease of AIDS, that case the husband was suffering from AIDS, if the husband is suffering from a dreadful disease of AIDS, and if he marries the girl knowing that he is suffering from such a disease, he is transmitting the infection to that woman, and he will be guilty of the offences provided under sections 269 and 270 of the Indian Penal Code. So if he is knowingly marrying, if he is marrying a lady after his knowledge about his disease, then certainly he will be liable to be prosecuted under sections 269 and 270 of the Indian Penal Code. Now coming to the seventh ground. Seventh ground, that is with regard to cruelty. While discussing cruelty with regard under Hindu Marriage Act and cruelty generally, I have told you that generally the lawgivers or the statute does not define as to what amount to cruelty or what all act will amount to cruelty. That is not elaborated, and we have seen a number of cases like Sheldon versus Sheldon, etc., wherein the court has opined that it should remain open so that the courts may be free to apply the cruelty having regard to the changing circumstances. But coming to the Dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act, in the Dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act, Section 2.8, Section 2.8 enumerates certain instances of cruelty. Enumerate certain instances of cruelty. We will see them one by one. One is that a habitual assault, making the life of the wife miserable by cruelty, physically or otherwise. So it attracts physical cruelty as well as mental cruelty. Again, another form of cruelty which has been provided under Section 2.8 is associating his wife with women of evil repute or leading an infamous life. So that is another instance of cruelty as provided under Section 2.8. Then again, another illustration, that is with regard to forcing his wife to lead an immoral life. If the husband force his wife to lead an immoral life, that will also amount to cruelty as provided under Section 2.8 of the Act. Then another act of cruelty is the dispossessing of the property, or the husband preventing the wife from exercising her rights over the property. That will also amount to cruelty. Again, obstructing the wife from the observance of her religious profession or practice. That will also amount to cruelty. Again, if the husband is having more wives than one, and if he is not treating them equitably, that will also amount to cruelty as provided under Section 2.8. Anyway, I would say that Section 2.8 Clause 1 would enable the court to extend the nature of cruelty as in the case of other statutes also. So it's left open there. And in Siddiq versus Amina, AIR 1996 Kerala 140, AIR 1996 Kerala 140, the division bench of the Kerala High Court has held that it is a cruelty. It's a cruelty to force a young woman who was desirous of becoming a mother to abort her pregnancy, unless it is necessary to save the life of the wife. If the husband is compelling his wife to abort her pregnancy against her will, that would amount to cruelty as provided by the division bench of the Kerala High Court in Siddiq versus Amina. And the court observed that it would come within the second limb of Section 2.8a, that is making the life of the wife miserable. So it will come within the purview of the second limb, that is making the life of wife miserable. Again, another division bench of the Kerala High Court in K. Muhammad Latif versus Nishat. K. Muhammad Latif versus Nishat, 2004, AIR 2004, Kerala 22. AIR 2004, Kerala 22. In this case, the division bench of the Honorable Kerala High Court observed that even though bigamy is permitted as per the Muslim law under exceptional circumstances, unless the husband treats all wife equally, it will amount to cruelty. Though in this case, the facts were somewhat different. He had divorced it, but after all, in the appeal, he says that invoking the provisions for bigamy under the Muslim law, he is ready to accept the wife. So here also the court has observed that if a husband does not treat all his wife equitably, such wife who has not been treated equitably is free to move the court on the ground of cruelty. Now coming to another concept of repudiation of marriage. Another ground for divorce which has been provided under the Dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act, that is a repudiation of marriage as provided under section 2.7 of the Act. Section 2.7 of the Act provides with repudiation of marriage. We have seen a similar provision in the Hindu Marriage Act also. So similar to that. And section 2.7 of the Dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act provides that if a marriage of a girl was solemnized before she attained the age of 15 years, she is having a right to repudiate the marriage before she attains the age of 18 years. So if the marriage was before 15 years of age, she has having a right to repudiate the marriage before she attains the age of 18 years. So the basic concept for the provision is that we have seen that the Muslim marriage, that is in the nature of a contract, and the contract, there should be a free consent of the parties. And the general concept of Muslim marriage is that a Muslim marriage can be effected only by persons who have attained the age of puberty. And in the case of minors, it can be solemnized through their parents, father or grandfather, etc. And prior to the enactment of Muslim Marriage Act 1939, a Muslim marriage who has been given in marriage by her father or grandfather did not have this option for repudiation of the marriage. Had she been given in marriage by any other relatives, she had the option of repudiation of the marriage. But prior to 1939, prior to the enactment of the Dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act, if she was given in marriage either by her father or grandfather, she did not have an option for redemption of marriage. But now the 1939 Act has provided for repudiation of marriage even if she has been given in marriage by her father or her grandfather. And going through the provisions of section 2.7, a girl can file an application for a dissolution of marriage under section 2.7 by exercising the option of puberty, if such marriage was solemnized during her minority. Secondly, if the marriage has not been consummated. And thirdly, the minor should repudiate the marriage. The minor should repudiate the marriage before she attained the age of 18 years. So if a minor girl is given, so the minor girl has been given an option to repudiate or to ratify the marriage. So upon attaining the age of 15 years, she is given 3 years of time, either to repudiate the marriage or to ratify the marriage, and that is to be exercised before she attains the age of 18 years. Now coming to this aspect of option of puberty, this can also be called as an option of puberty. And according to the Muslim law, the option of puberty is not limited to girls. The boys also who have been given in marriage, during their minority, they are also having an option of puberty. According to Shia law, if the marriage of a minor is performed by a guardian other than his or her father or grandfather, and if the minor, after attaining puberty, if he is not giving his or her consent after attaining puberty, by exercising the right of puberty, such marriage would become ineffective. So Shia law specifically provides that if a minor has been given in marriage, whether it be a girl or a boy, if he or she is not exercising his right of puberty after attaining the puberty, that marriage would be ineffective. So that is irrespective of whether the minor is a boy or a girl. And as we have seen, the puberty, it's generally presumed that puberty is attained upon completion of the age of 15 years, unless there is an evidence to the contrary. And in an observation was made by the Lahore High Court in Sakina versus Falak Shah Allah. Sakina versus Falak Shah Allah. A question has been raised. And we have also seen that if there is a consummation of marriage, this option of puberty could not be attracted. And that issue was discussed by the Lahore High Court in Sakina versus Falak Shah Allah, wherein the court observed that, or the court has held that anything done by the minor during the minority would not destroy the right. Anything done by the minor during the period of minority will not destroy the right, which would accrue only on attainment of puberty. So that means that even if there has been a sexual intercourse before the minor had attained puberty, that will not affect the right of to exercise the option of puberty. And the reason which has been stated is that the right to exercise the option of puberty would attain only when he or she attains puberty, and he or she is not in a position to exercise that right before the right accrues. And so itself, on account of a consummation of marriage prior to, or an act of sexual intercourse prior to the person attaining puberty, that cannot take away the option of puberty, and he or she will be free to exercise option of puberty. But if there has been a consummation of marriage or sexual intercourse after he or she has attained puberty, that will be binding, that will amount to ratification of the marriage. So the conditions as laid down in Sakina versus Falak Shah Allah is that the repudiation must be after attaining puberty, and the consummation should not have been taken place after attaining puberty. So the conditions, if a consummation has taken place before attaining puberty, then it is not a valid consummation for the purpose of exercising the option of puberty. So that's with regard to the option of puberty also. These are the provisions which are contained in the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act with regard to dissolution of marriage. And this act is also intended to provide a clarity with regard to the effect of conversion to another faith. So what will be the effect if a Muslim lady who has been married to a man in accordance with the Muslim law, if she converts herself to another faith? That has been provided under Section 4 of the Act. And Section 4 of the Act provides that renouncement of Islam and conversion to another faith by itself will not dissolve her marriage. So conversion, the mere fact of conversion by a lady to another religion would not by itself dissolve the marriage, and it will not amount to dissolution, automatic dissolution of marriage. However, she is having an option, or she is entitled to obtain a divorce on any of the other grounds which are provided under section 2. And with regard to a Muslim male, he is free to divorce or to pronounce talaq on his wife if he does not want his the relationship, the conjugal relationship with his wife after conversion. And the lady has been given an option to file an application for dissolution of marriage under any of the provisions contained in section 2 of the Act. So, the Dissolution of Muslim Marriages Act provides a Muslim lady also with an option to obtain divorce, exercising the principle of fasq, which is a mode of divorce as provided under the Muslim Personal Law. Thank you.